So thank you very much for a little bit of your precious time. And we thought what we would do today is talk about how you pair wines and chocolate, and then talk a little bit about flavour. And that's the sort of common theme which I think runs through not just wine and chocolate, but all great foods.
Well, wine, chocolate and flavour, they tick all my boxes.
They do. And we've even got some fermentation that we can mould in there too.
Even better.
So what we're going to start with is a red wine, a Rioja, which we're basically going to first of all try and pair to two different Ecuadorian chocolates, one of whom Tim already noticed, it was in his box from last week, which is made by the great Ascanozzi, including Sean Ascanozzi, including his daughter, Lauren. But I think we should probably start with the wine, so a nice Rioja, and we'll just sort of see what that's like, and we should get the tannins from there. Cheers. So again, we sort of do all these things that we're used to doing with wine. We sort of swirl it around, give it a sniff, put it in your mouth, sort of, aerate it, get it all going the right way. And one of the things which always slightly baffles me is that people with chocolate, there is a similar ritual, but we haven't yet got people into it. So you and I are going to practice this ritual. So we're going to basically both pick up a piece of the Ascanozzi. And the first thing, which is the equivalent of sort of spinning it around, is to give it a quick sniff. But then what you want to do is hold it up to your ear with two hands and snap it. And there you go. So you've got that snap. And that snap is about to show you what makes human beings unique in being able to develop and detect flavour in a completely different way. So we just want a little bit of a chocolate now. And then what we want to do is, before we put it in our mouths, is to hold our noses, because this is going to show how flavour develops. And we just drop it on our tongue, and we just suck it. Now, the advantage of having a piece of chocolate in your mouth as opposed to some wine is, of course, that you can breathe in and out through your mouth and you can talk. So how is it for you, Tim?
Not very tasty yet.
No, I don't think you're going to get a lot of this. You might get a little bit of texture. A little bit? Melting a little bit?
Yeah, it's softening.
Yeah, so if you need to chew it a little bit, it's okay. But if you could just suck it, it's absolutely great. Yep. Tap, tap. Okay, so we're going to count to three. Then we're going to release our nose and travel around 100 meters by breathing in and out through our mouths. 1, 2, 3. And suddenly, you get this whole sense of aromas and deliciousness, which really take you, I think, on a wave. And I think this is the sort of unique thing. Like great wines, great chocolates, your great kefirs, your great kombuchas, all great foods basically have got these natural ingredients. So what do you think? What sort of flavours are you getting from that? You can use this as your crib sheet, which is the wave.
The wave, well. Also, I got a bit of the texture with my mouth, with my nose closed, and whereas retronasal taste receptors started kicking in, and the brain started to have an effect. And I get out. First thing I noticed was a bit of smokiness, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
And there's a bit of smokiness and creaminess.
Bit of earthiness, I got.
Yeah, it's definitely more earthy than the average.
Yeah, it's got that sort of green and vegetable notes, which actually, in the case of chocolate, I actually think is a good thing. But probably if you apply it to other things like coffee, it's not always a good thing.
So yeah, smoky, creamy, hint of sort of honey, but not too much.
No. Should we try it now, and again, with a little bit with the wine? So this is basically Del Tambo.
So is the wine going to change our perception of the chocolate?
So I think what will actually happen is that the wine should go quite well with chocolate, because I deliberately picked quite a creamy, quite a silky wine, and this is quite a silky chocolate. And then what I hope is actually going to happen is that it's going to bring out different notes. They're going to sort of potentiate in different ways. But what I hope we do get from the get-go is that the texture and the mouthfeel are actually sort of quite complementary. And that's one of the advantages of having red wine and any sort of chocolate. So if we just try this again with the Ascanozzi, you definitely get the texture. I get it become a little bit more sharp.
Yeah, definitely sharp, coming in quicker.
Yeah, but it pulls it through quite nicely. Actually, I think it benefits the chocolate quite a lot. It gives it more of that sort of length. But I think the great thing about this, and this is sort of one of the things I think that all people who are considering their nutrition and their diet, is that I actually think that flavour, as opposed to all the additives which mass processed food throw at things, is incredibly important. And it's something which we just don't appreciate as a skill, because we as humans are unique in being able to detect flavour. It's not something any other animal can do.
And difference between taste and flavour?
You would be able to tell me better than I probably can tell you, but I'll give it a go and you can tell me whether right or not. So taste is basically a series of receptors that you have, mainly on your tongue, but going all the way down to your gut and beyond, which is sweetness, sourness, saltiness, bitterness, umami. Umami is that sort of deliciousness you get when you sort of brown meat or brown vegetables. And there's some arguments whether or not fat's there, but flavour is something you really get from the release of aromas and volatiles. So that's when you sniff a wine, when you sniff a chocolate, when you put something in your mouth, it releases those aromas and volatiles. And that's what sort of generates this sensation we have with flavour. But they are different, and other animals can't do this.
And volatiles are just chemicals floating in the air, aren't they?
Yes, that's exactly right, which is what happens with wine. So they're basically released and they go through your olfactory system. And the reason why it's so difficult in planes to enjoy them is that you basically haven't got enough water and moisture, so they just don't sort of get sucked up. But there we go. So, but what's your thoughts on flavour? Because it's something which nutritionists don't tend to think quite as much about as I would love them to.
Well, they hardly think about it at all, I would guess. But and I don't think many people know the difference between flavour and taste. No. And I think it's once you get into fermenting, and you suddenly realise that you're taking an ordinary product like a grape or something, and just by adding bacteria to it, you are multiplying the number of chemicals in there, the volatiles, hundreds of fold, and you're getting all this incredible rich experience that you're changing something like a taste of a bit of a grape on your tongue to this explosion of chemicals that really is all about flavour. Yeah,
I think it may well be God's great way of warning us that we're being fooled by ultra-processed foods, because ultra-processed foods are really all about taste, sugar, salt, and fat, and some additives. But even if they add a bit of, vanillin or something, it's going to be very, very quick.
I think it's as if we had a palette of paints that only had 4 or 5 colours.
That's a great analogy.
And suddenly you've got all these pastels, and you've got this myriad of different tones and colours which we can detect.
I think that's actually true. I think one of the things that's very interesting about flavour is that you can actually only detect 3 or 4 notes at any one time. So back to your colour analogy. The great thing about colour is that you can look at a picture and see sort of all the colours of the rainbow at the same time as well. Whereas in flavour, you can literally only identify 3 or 4, even if you're a great perfume nose or a great
at the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah, we can. Someone said that you can actually pick up billions, can't you?
You can, and we're just as good as bloodhounds. The bloodhound analogy is all
I
wrong.
like that one. Yeah,
that was definitely all wrong. So we're now going to basically stay in Ecuador, but we're actually going to have with a bar which is made in Ecuador by a Yemeni and a Ecuadorian couple, but it's got a very different texture to it. It's also rather delightfully made in the shape of a coin. So I think we'd like to try this one and see whether or not this one will work as well. So what we're looking here is for the difference in texture. And I actually have a feeling that it may not...
We these at Christmas.
We did, but they're probably made slightly differently. Gelt, as it were. Well, it's deliberately very different flavour and quite a different texture. Quite crunchy. So it's stone ground, not fully ground or conch.
So it's drier and it's sort of harder to get into a paste, isn't it?
Yeah. It doesn't melt in quite the same way in your mouth. So let's now try this chocolate with the wine and see whether or not it's as good a pairing. Now, both of them are Ecuadorian. They are from slightly different places. One is from Australia, one is from Manabí. And there will be different fermentations. Similar bean. Yeah, similar cocoa content. Both actually the same, both 70%. Different grind, different conch. Different fermentation, probably slightly different beans too.
Is this just a coarser version of that? I mean, the consistency, is that why it's more crunchy on the palate?
It's just basically the way it's being ground, yeah. It's nothing else. It's basically where you get the consistency in a chocolate bar is actually how you grind it and how you conch it. And it does make quite a difference, I think, to the flavour release. It just doesn't sort of quite bring out. I mean, it's a lovely chocolate.
Well, we need to go for it. We need to
have another bit.
Have another bit, I think, to give it a fair.
Give it a fair whack. Now, let's give it another try.
No, it didn't have the same impact.
No, it just doesn't sort of quite. You're not getting 1 and 1 equals 7. You're getting 1 and 1 equaling 3, maybe. Now, in honour of your fermentation love, this is a double fermented bar. So this is slightly strange. It's made by a guy called Warren, who goes down at Pali Pali in Taiwan. And they do grow cacao in Taiwan instead of betel nuts. And this is Pingtang double fermentation rough ground chocolate. The reason why it's called a double fermentation is he puts it through the normal cacao fermentation, and then he adds some tea into it to get a secondary fermentation and get some of the flavour to it at that point. But this is going to have 2 different impacts. And this is where I'm going to use your rather nice knife, very sort of slightly frightening device, sort of open it up, and I think we just basically both. And again, texturally, this is going to be even more grainy. So excuse my hands.
Okay, so Taiwanese double fermented tea chocolate.
Tea chocolate. The texture of this should be quite fun. And again, you can really smell it.
Very different.
Yeah, very, very different. Again, you've got some of the earth in it, which I think will go quite well.
Texture somewhere between the 2.
Mm-hmm. Although the texture of this one takes a lot longer to come through because it's much thicker bar. So literally, I think that's one of the things.
That's the other factor, isn't it? It's just purely structural.
Yeah, it's very much like having different wines out of different grants. They can taste very different because, as you sort of said, it's where you put the volatiles, it's how they get released. And it works in a different way. So it's really got quite a grainy after.
It does, yes. It's like sand in your mouth after a while.
Well,
That's totally nice.
in a nice sort of way. Yeah. It's not like having sand kicked in your face. It sort of works quite well. So let's try it again with the red wine, so this Rioja. So I think Rioja is always quite a good wine.
We're going to end up drinking a whole bottle of Rioja this way.
Much sweeter. So I think that the sweetness of the chocolate is compounded, but also much cooler.
The chocolate also changes
Yeah.
the way you perceive the Rioja instantly.
Yeah, it's a great combination, but this insight, humans are the only animals, or one of the very few animals, which can delight in flavour. And I think focusing on flavour, as opposed to just scoffing and stuffing your face and gobbling because of taste and the bliss point, is incredibly important. So it's all very important to look at the back of the ingredients. In the case of craft chocolate, it's wonderful because it's just going to be 2 ingredients. It's going to be cocoa beans and a bit of sugar. But above and beyond that, it's also a question of actually appreciating the flavour, because I think that one works quite well. And just for the fun of it, just to sort of show you how the variation works, because we've tried 3 different chocolates here, admittedly one from Taiwan. But I thought what would be quite interesting is actually just to try a couple of chocolates now from radically different places, both made in Sweden. And I don't think either of these are going to work particularly well with the wine, but I just thought we'd just try it. One of them is made in Peru, which I'm holding upside down, Chuncho, and the other one is Iduki in India. So I thought what we'd probably first of all try is the India, which one I think will probably work slightly better. Now, they put, unhelpfully, red apple, raisin, and cherry. I'd say there's probably a bit of cherry. I'm not sure I get much red apple. Do get some raisin. Let's get some caramel.
Getting caramel now. So do you think you should be be told what you should be tasting, or does that
I think that
bias you so much?
Well, I think it's fine to be biased. I think the 2 great secrets of any sort of tasting should be have a good mate behind you, or with you, or your partner, or your wife, and then secondly, have quite a few different things to try. Because unlike when you look at a picture and you can sort of see all the colours coming through, actually flavour is much easier to appreciate by combining and contrasting. So just to show you, before we actually go back to the wine, let's try the Peru, because this will really sort of blow your mind as to how different they are. So this is basically the Urundala.
Made by the same people.
Made by the same people, exactly the same way, same percentage. So what you're really tasting here is completely different beans, completely different fermentation, utterly different stuff. Yeah. Which is going to be much, much more, I mean, to me, this is bubblegum in the nicest possible way. Very, very floral.
Yeah, it's like a very forward wine, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Very young.
That's exactly what it actually is. This is Beaujolais Nouveau in a glass. But the fun bit to it is the way. Because
it's like a very forward wine, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Very young.
That's exactly what it actually is. This is Beaujolais Nouveau in a glass. But the fun bit to it is the way. As we sort of wait, now it starts to get some depth, get some complexity. Try it again with the chocolate. Let's try that with the stand out and see if you prefer that one.
I'd lost my chocolate by then. So
you need to have another go. But Tim, so tell me a little bit about when do you have your chocolate?
Usually end of the meal, the dregs of wine that might be left over after that meal. Upstairs in front of the telly, and break open a bar and say, what do you think of this one?
So I think that's the interesting thing, is it's very different.
We compare notes and...
so you are comparing, you are contrasting.
And sometimes we like them both, and sometimes we disagree. And that's why it is fun, definitely, when you've got 2 or 3 bars to have a go at, because it's definitely a skill. It's all about relativity rather than absolutism, isn't it? It's like saying, well, I can compare it to this, but there's no absolute. I can't score this.
No, I think scoring is a mistake.
I think scoring chocolate on a Parker scale would be nonsense. I think it would just.
I think you're right. But I think what you can say is, if you're looking for sort of length and intensity and complexity, that's what separates sort of great craft chocolate, which is all about casing up flavour with beans, from mass-produced nonsense, which is all about sugar, salt, fat, and a bit of texture. Should we sort of figure out which one we thought was the best pairing? You want to have another go at the Ascanose and see if it's still holding it out for you? There you go. Now those are very, very good devices. There you go.
It's actually a Parmesan knife.
It's definitely a Gazinta Parmesan knife. That's a lot bigger than a Parmesan knife. But I think this is sort of something that you can take driving. Yeah, this is definitely a grand padua. Now that we've gone through the other chocolates, to me, that has much, much more of the vegetable and earthy notes that I love in Ecuadorian chocolate.
Yes, the equivalent of an Australian Shiraz, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's a good Australian Shiraz with a lot of sort of, fun and texture going with it.
Yeah, I think it's still my...
So your favourite and the go-to? I think India's not...
The Indian rye quite likes as my second,
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
I forgot which one it is now.
So that's the Iduki India from Standout. Oh, you want a bit more? Is that a subtle hint?
Well, I've got them mixed up now.
I think that's the problem. But yeah, it's much more difficult than wine, because you haven't got as much colour to sort of go on. So Tim, we're now about to do something which I think is actually sort of quite brave and quite difficult. which is to match a non-red wine to some chocolates, and in particular some milk chocolates.
Because normally white wine is a bit of a no-no.
It is. It's a bit of a no-no because the mouthfeel just doesn't work. The tannins just in the chocolate just overpower it, even in a milk chocolate.
But what about dessert wine? No?
Even dessert wines, you can sometimes do a good pairing. You can sometimes do a good pairing with a really oaky Chardonnay. So an oaky Chardonnay actually goes very, very well with Menical. Got a bit of Madagascar and vanilla in it. But in general, it is very, very hard to match white wines or non-red wines with any sort of chocolate. And for those of you who love white wines or who love milk chocolates, this is a tragedy, but it's a tragedy which the great Rebecca Palmer from Corny and Barrow has managed to address and to fix with an orange wine from Chile. There we go. Naranjo, which apparently is orange, which I'm sure your Spanish will be much better than mine to be able to give us a go. I'm going to give you a bit of a big glass because we've quite a few chocolates to have a go through here. So, given this is a Chilean wine, we should first of all give it a quick go. I love this wine actually.
And just explain the definition of orange wine to people.
So basically it's got skin contact. So some of the grapes have been left in there.
We've all left for a little bit, but this is more than usual.
This is more than usual. So you get this sort of lovely sort of pinkish, orangish quality. Is that right? I mean, you're better on wine than I am.
Yeah, so this is sort of halfway between a red and a white, really. So,
yeah, but it's much closer to a white. I mean, I think...
It tastes closer to a white.
I mean, you would not have this with a steak. This would definitely not go with, or even a mushroom risotto, really.
But interesting, health-wise, it's got, the reason it tastes like it is because it's got extra polyphenols.
It does have the polyphenols.
So it's a good thing because we have lots of polyphenols in our chocolate, and we've now got it extra in our, what was a white wine that's now been supercharged because we're leaving the...
So what we thought we'd start with, and I'm not sure this is the perfect pairing, but it's a very appropriate pairing, is to actually go to Chile for chocolate.
It's a lovely wine, so with or without chocolate.
There you go. So
definitely
fantastic
wine.
And this is the 2021. We've been basically doing this now for 3 or 4 years, and it is one of the great. We're going to come on at the end to the perfect New Zealand pairing of this, but we're going to start with the dark milk, and I'm going to give you a piece of it there, Tim. This is basically made by the great Mark Garrett in Chile with beans from Pangoa. So if any of you have been to a virtual tasting with us, you'll know that one of the answers to the questions is it's got an interesting smell, this, because it's basically American milk, which always has a slightly different smell to...
Like Hershey bars.
Yeah, it doesn't have butyric acid in it, so it's not going to smell of cheese or smelly feet or anything like that. But quite creamy, given that we've just been having some red. But again, even though it's a milk chocolate, so it's a little bit more, fatty, you still get this lovely sort of wave, I think, going with it. It definitely develops in lots of different ways. If we just try it with the wine, I think it's going to be probably a little bit clashing. I think the reason why it's going to clash a little bit is because it's going to be almost too cloying and sweet, but I think it'll still hold it because the tannins will still work. It brings out a little bit more of the sharpness and the acidity. I know that you have lots of different foods for breakfast, Tim. So would you like to just describe what you would have for breakfast? I know you sort of don't always have breakfast, but on the days that you do have breakfast, what do you have?
I normally have, because I'm a big fan of diversity. So someone offers me a new exciting breakfast, I'll go for it. I guess my go-to basic breakfast would be a bowl of Greek full-fat yogurt with my homemade kefir and some berries that I might have, a bit of chopped up pears at the moment.
Chopped up pears? Oh, wow.
And then a mix of nuts and seeds that I keep in my diversity jar. That would be
going to your 30 a day, in your case, not 30 a week. So I know that you're not a great fan of it, but I'm a huge fan of, after I've had my eggs, which thanks to Zoe, I now know are very, very good for me because they basically give me the energy through my day and they stop me basically my blood sugars going all over the roof, which is what used to happen when I had porridge. But so eggs are my secret. I do still have a guilty pleasure, which is I have some olive oil, not some butter anymore, which I put onto my bread, and I have some marmalade with it. And what I'd like to suggest, with a bit of auto-suggestion, is that this chocolate, which is the buttered toasted sea salt by Carl Hogarth, and the orange wine, is basically chocolate's answer to my favourite breakfast, which is, the Paddington special.
Marmalade on
toast. So just give it a try. Here you go.
I'm a marmalade fan, actually, but I don't have it very often.
I think marmalade is just one of the greatest things ever. Made with Vogel's bread, which I'm not sure is really the world's greatest bread. I think it probably would fail when you're...
Well, it's got lots of seeds in it.
It does have lots of seeds in it, but I think maybe still surely would process. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing a great
I'm sure it is. But...
Now this, to me, really, really beautifully complements the wine.
I agree with that.
Right. It's just a treat. Now, given that I've been sort of coughing a little bit too much. What I thought we'd now do is, this is an interesting experiment. So Pump Street have recently reorganized their packaging, beautiful new packaging in sort of what's called Suffolk Pink. And we've got two different chocolates here. So we're going to first of all start with their cookie chip, which is a new 60% dark milk. So very similar.
Pump Street's an English brand.
Pump Street's a great English brand run by Joanna and Chris Brandon. And Chris is an ex software engineer, originally from Jamaica, worked in video games too, came up to the UK, got originally into bread. And their signature is to have these amazing breads and chocolates. And they will be along with you at our Fidelio Craft Chocolate Fair on the 2nd and 3rd of December. They'll be talking about how bread and chocolate go together, and you're going to be talking about how fermentation and flavour and all great things are the secret to life. And let's just try their new bar, which is their cookie chip, which I think is a fantastic bar, beautiful texture. This is one of those bars that I normally go on about how you should savour chocolate. But this bar is just pretty difficult.
You want to scoff it?
Well, I don't want to say scoff it, but it's definitely harder to hold yourself to a little bit. It is a fantastic bar. And again, I think it goes actually pretty well with chocolate. Again, what it does is it brings out, it definitely, I think, Carl, I think you've got a challenge on your hands here. I think that the cookie chip is a pretty...
Which should be sweeter, the wine or...
That's an interesting question. So this is a 60% milk chocolate, which means that actually it's probably got less added sugar than many of the 70% that we've had, because you're going to be using the milk to caramelize it. I don't know is the answer to that. I think it's partly perceptual.
But I think it's quite nice to have the sharpness of the wine at some extent. So if it was a dessert wine that was too sweet, you may not get that.
I think that's true. I think the problem with dessert wines is they're almost cloy when you have it with white chocolate or with a milk chocolate. But let's just try it, because we've now got the brown bread, which is slightly confusing, because this actually is a white chocolate. Now, if you look at it, you wouldn't really, let me just get out a big piece.
I'm not a fan of white chocolate.
Well, I think we're about to change it. I really do. I think we've got two chocolates which are going to change it. So that is not what most people think of as a white chocolate. So it's just cocoa butter, but it's got quite a lot of other fun flavours. It's also basically from Hacienda Limon, which we had in one of the other tastings earlier on. Are we sort of starting to get you to convert?
Pretty sweet for me.
Too sweet for you? Try it with the wine. I think the interesting thing though here is that neither of us are sort of going, oh my God, this just doesn't work. Which if we went back to some of the other wines that you had earlier.
It definitely improves with the wine, this one. It brings down the sweetness and
yeah, it does.
Blends it.
I think that's the great thing about flavour. The great thing about flavour is we still don't really understand how we recognise it, how we work with it. But it is the great way of basically testing if a product is well made. Because you can look at the ingredients, and that's very important. But you can't always see from the ingredients is whether or not they've extruded it, whether or not they've sort of flavoured all sorts of different weird and wacky processes that you couldn't do at home. But once you get flavour, that's something which you can't recreate in the factory.
Definitely. It definitely works.
Definitely works.
I'm not a convert to...
Okay, one more time. Okay, so this is a Ghanaian blonde. This is from a vodka, and this is a caramelized white. Now, caramelized whites date back to the CIA, not the CIA that you're raising an eyebrow. This is the Colouring Institute of America, invented by a guy called Brian Graham, who is Bob Dylan's doctor's son-in-law. Just to get me confusing. It works for a wonderful company called Fruition. But anyway, this is actually made according to those recipes. This is a blonde chocolate made by the great Chocolada down in Cornwall. And this is, I think, basically, if you were into caramel, if you were into milk chocolate, which is, not sort of white chocolate. No, you won't get a lot, and it doesn't have a lot of polyphenols, which you kind of love. But it is.
But I thought white chocolate was fake chocolate.
No, it's just cocoa butter with a lot of milk and a bit of sugar added to it. Originally invented in the 1920s by the Swiss government, who were desperate to get kids to drink milk, and when they discovered that 15-20% of Swiss children wouldn't do that, asked Nestle to help them. So they invented something which is still sold in various parts of the world as Nestrokit, which is a vitamin supplement whose primary ingredient is milk powder and lots of cocoa butter. And then after 5 or 6 years, they worked out that white chocolate was good. And we always end all of our virtual tastings with this, because nobody ever believes that you can have decent white chocolate. But I'm not sure that we're going to completely convert you. But if you had to serve a white chocolate, would you not be out there with this?
I think I probably would. It definitely beats Milky Bar.
Oh, that is not chocolate. That is definitely not chocolate.
The wine does make it very edible.
So I honestly think, hats off to Corny and Barrow, hats off to Rebecca Palmer. This Chilean wine, which we actually tasted today down at the big sort of Chilean embassy, and I just think they've really sort of nailed it. This orange wine is my go-to wine with any sort of milk chocolates.
I can need a case of it to cope.
I'm sure we can sort of sort something out on those ones.
Oh.
But so do we agree that basically the thing that unites them all is flavour?
Absolutely. Enjoy.
So this is Taste the West here.
This is Taste the West.
This is Devon.
I spent a lot of time in Devon, and there's some great Devon rums at the moment. And I've got into rum with all the different blends and spices, etc. And I was thinking, sometimes I've enjoyed a glass of rum of an evening with some chocolate. But I'd love your expertise on saying what would be the ideal pairing for a spicy sort of rum with one of these chocolates.
So this is very impromptu because we came around here to basically do some wines, which we've basically done sort of quite successfully. And I haven't yet actually asked you about whether or not you've actually done any of the swims, like the Bantam Swoosh or the Darts or anything like that down in Devon, which is, along with the fact that we have our warehouse down in Devon, the greatest thing I know about Devon, and it's a very beautiful county and everything else. So, okay, so let's have a go at the rum. Are you going to tell me why it should be? Gosh, that feels as if I'm not going to get out to dinner after this. But anyway, so tell me what I should be.
Well, you should be getting all those aromatics from the rum itself.
It's surprisingly mellow.
And it is mellow because of the...
It's 37.5.
The rum, and this one's got a bit of honey in it as well.
Ah. So that's the reason it's got those little sort of like honeycombs on the front.
Yeah, but there are all kinds of great rums. Every village now in Devon and South Devon seems to have its own rum.
Is this because they're great smugglers in the past and they're basically sort of trying to sort of go back through their image? So I think what do you think it goes with? Because it's quite sweet, right? It is quite sweet.
But it's got some complexity. So how do we bring out the best of both? How do we enjoy that after a meal rum with a chocolate?
So I think the first thing is the after the meal rum is basically a digestif, isn't it? It's to sort of get you going. But so the great thing about chocolate at the end of a meal is that it will get your second stomach activated, which basically is that because when you see something lovely like this,
I'm not a cow, but
no. So the second stomach is, if you have not noticed that this at the end of a meal, you feel completely stuffed, especially when Veronique's cooked one of our amazing meals. Do you not feel that you're completely sort of full and just, that's it?
Okay,
yeah. And then suddenly, somebody brings out an amazing pudding, and suddenly you've got room.
Okay.
So the Japanese did some stuff to show that this is actually true, because what happens is that when your stomach sees through your eyes something which is sweet, it will actually start to basically encourage faster digestion. And there's a great Japanese TV program which did this, and we've got it on our website, cakeorange.com. And you can basically sort of see pictures of people trying that. So I think the first thing we're going to try is a Madagascar chocolate made by the great Sushiya-san. And we are basically going to see whether or not this is too sweet and basically a little bit too...
What percentage is that?
This is a 65%, but classic Madagascar, bit of fruit. I'm not sure the fruit's going to completely go with your rum.
There's a bit of a clash there.
Might be a bit of a clash. I think it might have been a bit too vague.
So you don't want something too similar. You want to be able to get a contrast.
You need to start with a bit of balance. It's a bit like Goldilocks. So we need to start with a bit of balance. And what this does for me now that I'm trying the rum is it brings out the alcohol in the rum. It doesn't necessarily bring out the flavours. Okay, so let's move on to chocolate from Grenada, made by the great Rouquette, who were originally ice cream makers, but in the winter they discovered that selling ice cream, and even in Italy, it doesn't work that brilliantly. This is a Grenadian chocolate. Let's see if that one works. This might have a bit of spice to it, so it might just work. It definitely can hold its own to the rum, I think. It definitely brings out some of the fondant qualities and some of the length and the greenness to the chocolate.
Yeah, definitely a lot better.
Okay, and now let's go to Pangoa via Chile, and we're going to try an 85%. Now, what I'm hoping the 85% is that one of the things that rum does is that it's quite astringent. So basically, it's actually more spicy. It's actually trigeminal, whereas what chocolate's going to be is a bit more astringent. So it's actually going to bind with the proteins in your saliva and pull its flavour notes out.
That's the theory.
So what I'm hoping is this is going to do the Mike Tyson. This is going to knock the rum back on itself and get a couple of notes that you were missing, because otherwise you sort of just too much taken in by the honey and the sweetness. And let's just see if it works. Yeah, to me that worked.
I think it's great. You really need a strong, powerful chocolate, don't you, to cut through the sweetness and get to the flavours.
It's a little bit like your Parmesan, it basically sort of gets to the point. It sort of really sort of works it.
You want a chocolate that doesn't mess around.
Yeah, you don't really want. You want the no nonsense. You want the Zoe approach to the sort of the cap. But what a great rum! But I do think that the Pangoa definitely.
Okay, that's the rum lovers chocolate then.
There we go. So basically, 85% Pangoa chocolate. Give it a go, guys. It'll work brilliantly.
Okay, and enjoy your tasting experiences because all of them, like your microbiome, are going to be completely unique. Thank you.